Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're doing well. We are excited about today. It's part one of a two-part series on building your personal wealth. Well, first question to you. How is it going with your finances? Are you struggling to make ends meet? Okay. What about your monthly budget? Do you have one? How much financial freedom do you want one day? Or do you have enough already? Here's one for you. What's your definition of being rich? What is the difference between being rich and being wealthy? And what are the steps required to build financial wealth? So why I'm excited about this is a lot of us in industry, in the mining industry, doesn't matter where you are in life, we do need to understand this topic about financial wealth and financial well-being really, really well in our lives in order to be successful. And a lot of us in listening to this podcast, and you that are high performers, that are very ambitious about your careers and your life, you do want to do well in financially, you do want to progress. And what do you do when you get these promotions all the time? And how do you build that into your financial wealth plan? So just a disclaimer up front, you need one for this one, is that I'm not a certified financial planner or an advisor. I will simply share, and we will simply share what we've learned over the years that has worked for us. And I know it will add value to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have shared it, because these are things that we practice on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. And we've seen some successes in our lives. And we really want to share these principles with you. And they're generic principles. They are principles that are taught by many, many entrepreneurs, many wealthy business owners. And we simply are sharing what we've learned. And I'm very excited that today, in this very first part of this series, you're going to learn a lot. All right, so we're going to touch on 7 key themes for today, and on part 2 we'll cover another 7, so 14 in total. And it's more than the normal 3 to 5 that we normally have on this podcast. So I'll just touch on them briefly. Financial education being the first one. Then secondly, getting rid of bad debt. Thirdly, living below your means. Fourthly, having a budget. Apologies for the background noise there. Fifthly, getting promoted. Now what? Number 6, the comparison black hole. And number 7, advanced financial education. All right. Are you excited? I am, and I'm very excited to share this with you. As I said right up front, I'm not a certified financial planner, nor qualified to be teaching on this in any way. Simply sharing knowledge and information and practical experience and real life examples of what has worked for us as a family, as a mining engineer in my career, and really sharing those learnings and hoping that it will make a difference in your life as well. Let's start with financial education as the first step. Now, you probably know this. If you don't, maybe this is new information to you, but 90% of people in the world do not own the wealth of the world. The wealth of the world across all countries and across all continents are basically owned by 10% of the people. Now that's a scary statistic. And why that is that it's about financial education. but more importantly, it's about the application of our financial education. And let's start with me as an example. My first sort of financial education didn't start at school with my parents or anything. I just grew up in a family that we didn't have a lot. We were actually quite poor, and also in a family where my father and my mother didn't have the financial education, certainly not the way I have it today. And as a result, they made a lot of mistakes, financial mistakes, and practical mistakes in living their lives. So my first real exposure to, call it, financial education was in my third and fourth year at university, doing my mining engineering degree, and you had to do financial valuation as a course, and you had to calculate net present values, and you have to calculate internal rate of returns and all the financial metrics that we know about and that you've heard about. So reading financial statements, understanding what that means, understanding what is profit and what is loss, and really investment, and starting to scratch the surface on on financial education. It was more like, okay, well, all right, I get this, but I also was not very intrigued with it and was not very into it. I barely passed the exam in fourth year, and yeah, there's nothing wrong in doing that. And then I had some more education when I did a management development program through a business school. It was a 1-year postgrad qualification, sort of a mini MBA. And that's sort of when the penny dropped a little bit more for me. And then further on, later in my life, when I did my master's in business, then it was advanced financial valuation and advanced financial international business and all of that. And that's really when I realized how little I know, and also really struggled. I barely made the exam. I actually couldn't believe I passed the third year, one of the subjects in the final year. And once again, a lot of theory, not a lot of practical application. But what I did realize during this time was I realized that a motor vehicle, is not an asset. It's really has got no value. Once you've taken it out of the showroom, you've driven it down the road to your house, it's already dropped 25% in value because it's now secondhand. And I made a decision very early when I got that first awakening, and that, as I say, that was like while I was busy doing my master's in business, that the vehicles that we have at that stage will be the last new ones we're going to buy. We're going to pay them off as quickly as possible, and then that vehicle will probably become a vehicle for one of those for our kids when they go to university. Or we will just take the extra money and put it into our house and paying our house off quicker. So that was the very first very good decision that I made in my life, probably the turning point in my life. And it was very hard because, once you've paid off that vehicle, and within a year, we took all our extra bonuses and what we've earned and we put it into paying off the vehicles. And it's very easy then to be comparing against the Joneses and your friends and your colleagues at work that are constantly buying new cars. And we just stuck to that principle, saying we're not going to buy new cars. We're going to take the extra money. We're not going to spend it. We're going to pay it off on our house. And we did that diligently for 9 years. And then I started reading. I've always heard about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book, one of the books from Robert Kiyosaki. And that was, call it, the most practical financial education I got. And I started reading his first book, and then read it again. I read it again, and then I got hold of his other books. And I realized that I know very little about how the world works and how the financial system works, and how do you fix your personal problems in terms of wealth building. And uh, that was when I also started listening to podcasts and listening to other people that have done this and educated themselves and practiced getting out of this rat race that we all in. Which leads me to the second point, which is getting rid of bad debt. Now, there's good debt and bad debt, and today is not about discussing that. But really, what bad debt is that it has no long standing value for you. If you've got bad debt, it's like credit card debt, it's like a clothing account. It's not debt that has built an asset. Like if you have a rental property that you are paying off and you've got people in that that's renting it from you, that's good debt because it is an asset that generates income and you still have to pay that property off, but that property is good debt because somebody is staying in it, you're renting it out, and it's creating cash flow for you, or it's creating income, not yet cash flow because you're still paying it off. But once it's paid off, that good debt becomes an asset that puts money into your pocket. And so a lot of us, and our first experience on this point of good debt and bad debt is I realized what was bad debt. We didn't have any clothing accounts. We closed those down. We 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 closed down our credit cards. We had credit cards purely as a way to access cash if you need it, but we really got rid of our bad debt, and that was phenomenal because we were paying off all of the extra money we had on our house, and well, firstly we started getting rid of all the bad debt with smaller credit cards and the likes. Once we've paid off our vehicles, it was into credit cards and clothing accounts and all of that. We cleared all of that, and we then put the extra money in paying off our bond quicker. So that was really a good decision on our end, and that really helped us going forward. Then the third secret that I believe is a secret is living below your means. Now, this is a tough one because most of us, as we get promoted and as you get that new salary increase with that promotion, you raise your living standards. Now, there's nothing wrong in raising your living standards, but there is something wrong if you take what you've now got extra and you just spend it all instead of reinvesting it into building your wealth. So if yeah, I could distinctly recall once when I was still very junior in my career and I heard the money, I heard about the salaries that a manager got, for example, and I was then, still a minor and earning a very small salary. And I thought to myself, wow, if you earn that much money, yeah, what a comfortable lifestyle. How can you not have enough when you earn that amount of money? The problem is that as we get promoted and as we get and advance through our careers, we raise our living standards. We go on more expensive holidays, we buy more expensive clothes, we buy fancier fancier cars, we move neighborhoods. This house is no longer good enough for us, so we move to a bigger house, and we have to keep up with the Joneses. And that's probably the most difficult thing to do is to change your mindset and not compete with the Joneses, but have a long game that you're playing and understand that if you can live below your means, if you have a lot of extra cash every month that's left over, you have got the opportunity now to really build wealth. And that is probably the most difficult thing for people to do. If you look at Warren Buffett, one of the world's most respected, wealthy entrepreneurs, business people, richest people in the world, if you look at him, he still stays in the same house. He hasn't bought more houses and stays in the best neighborhood. He still stays pretty much in the same house he's had for many years. He also drives around in the same car. You won't see him just splashing out money to just, you know, show the world that he's got all this wealth. And the wonderful opportunity we have in the mining industry is that you can leverage a lot of what the industry offers in terms of free accommodation. Maybe you are an expatriate, you are doing fly-in, fly-out operations, you're staying for free at the mine site or close to being free at the mine site, or you've got the mining supplied accommodation. That's a wonderful opportunity to buy a property that you can have put people in that rent that property from you, and you save that money that you don't have to pay for accommodation by having another property and people stay in that property. And in a lot of cases, we do want to own our own property, which again is a topic for another conversation. But really, where we are today is we don't own any properties in our own names. We have that in companies' names, and you shouldn't, if you can avoid it, don't have property in your own name. Now, that's a whole different conversation about how the banking system is set up to have you always work for them and you're not building wealth. But living below your means, the third point, really, really important to do that, and to not buy that new fancy car when you get promoted. And by the way, to finalize this point, every time, and I've signed many promotions and I've had many people where I was a leader and they got promoted, there was internal promotions, they got a lot more money. And every time I had a conversation with those people, I said to them, don't take this promotion, this extra money, and buy a new fancy car or upgrade your vehicle. Don't do it. Take the extra money, stick with your means of living. If you've got debt, pay off your debt, and then buy property or do something that your money goes and it is invested. Don't spend the money. I'll tell you the statistics, and I didn't make records of this, but I can probably tell you that 9 out of 10 people didn't take that advice, and which explains our point in the beginning that 90% of the world's wealth is owned by 10% of individuals. All right, moving on to the fourth one, have a budget. All right. A lot of us don't have budgets. We don't even know how much we spend. We don't know what's our expenses. We don't have a list of what's the important stuff to spend money on, and what's our income, what's our expenses, and we don't prioritize those either. And that's the very first point. That's the starting point, is to have a budget and to stick to your budget. A secret that a lot of wealthy people in the world do is they have a 10-10-10 rule. So 10%, so they pay themselves first. So when you get your salary or your income, you pay yourself first. What does that mean, paying yourself first? Well, first of all, you take 10% and you put it in investments, 10% in a saving account for a rainy day, and 10% for charity or whatever way you want to give back to the world. That's, in most cases, what the rich do, the wealthy do. They know that by giving and paying themselves first, they will build their wealth. And then after that, then they have their living expenses, paying off, or your food and insurance and doing what you need to do. And then whatever is left after that, you can also use to invest. But having a budget is a very good step in the right direction of understanding what's happening with your finances. And going back to the previous point about living below your means, is when you get promoted, there's a lot more extra cash. And if you keep track on your budget and you have last 3 years of your monthly budgets, you will see that you are earning more as you get promoted, because that's why listening to this podcast, you are advancing in your career, but you're keeping track of how you spend your money. And you will see that you'll be able to build wealth rapidly over time. And it's those small things that you do that will create that wealth. But take that budget, think about the very wealthy people out there. They spend less than 50% on themselves. They are able to keep their living standards as they get more money, as they make more money, as they earn more money. They invest it heavily and they give back heavily. That's why you get philanthropists like Bill Gates giving a lot back. All right, moving on to the fifth one. And we only have 7 today, is getting promoted. Now what? All right, we spoke about this. When you get promoted, this is not the opportunity to buy that new fancy car. I'm not saying that you can't raise your living standards and that you can't save up for that overseas holidays that you've always dreamed about. It's great to reward yourself with small things, and I'm not saying in any way that you shouldn't treat yourself every now and then. We do that often. But be very conscious of the fact that if you get promoted and you get a substantial increase in your salary, or you get that bonus, it's really just that. It's a massive bonus. It's an investment opportunity. It's an opportunity to pay off bad debt. It's an opportunity to make that deposit in that property or that investment that will have great returns for you. And would really want to urge you, as I've spoken about this now extensively, be very careful what you do when you get promoted and how you spend that money. Have a conversation with your partner, with your inner circle, about how to build your wealth. All right, we're getting to the second last point for today, the comparison black hole. When you compare yourself to other people all the time, it will be a black hole. It will suck you in and it will spin you around. You will never get out of it. You'll have to stop comparing yourself against other people. What car they drive, which neighborhood they stay in. By the way, let's take it to the extreme where you now have a lot of money. You are wealthy. And what is enough? When is it enough? Is it owning your first house that's paid off, that you don't own anything anymore on it? Is it owning 3 houses? Is it owning a house on different continents? When is enough enough? Is it having houses on different continents and then having your own yacht and your own private jet? When is enough enough? And that's something you have to decide for yourself. Happiness is a state of mind, and it's not in material things. The wealthiest people in the world realize that, and you will see many, many books written on this, and you will see and hear many quotes on this, and you will see and follow many podcasts on this, that it's purely a state of mind. It's what you decide is enough. What is enough for you? And you have to make that decision, and once you've made that decision, stick to that. For us, we stay in a normal neighborhood. It's nothing fancy. It's not the most spectacular house, but it's paid off. We have lots of fun. We have extra money. And I don't need to drive around in a Porsche. I'm happy. And we are building businesses. We are entrepreneurs. I'm enjoying my career in mining and consulting. But for me, that's joy. I'm living my dream by just having accepted what is enough for me. And by the way, if you have decided that and you keep your living standards, it's incredible how more wealthy you become because you're in a state of happiness and you've decided what makes you happy. Now, the comparison black hole has sucked in so many people that if you want to be part of the 90% of people that will always be in the rat race, that's up to you. But make a decision today that you will decide for the next 10 years, maybe take stock every 10 years, what is enough for you, what's going to make you happy, and then stick to that. Don't let the Joneses pull you into something that you're not. We have a philosophy, this is my wife and I, that we don't own anything. Everything belongs to God. The properties we have, the businesses we have, it's not ours. It's a means to serve people. It's a means to serve and give back. And we drive old cars. You know, we've got a 2008 and a 2009 and a 2012 vehicle. All three of them have been long paid off. They are not assets. They are just liabilities. They're just expenses. If your vehicle does earn you income, if you use your vehicle as a courier service, that's an asset because it generates income to you. It will depreciate over time, but it is an asset because it puts money into your pocket by being a courier service or a truck or whatever. But if your personal vehicle is just there to take you from A to B, that's a liability. So yes, we drive around in old cars. I call it my status symbols. It's the fact that we've made those decisions that has allowed us to own property and have people in those properties that are giving us income every month without us having to work for it. Which is the seventh point and the final point for today, leads us to that, is advanced financial education. You will never stop learning about finances. I'm only starting to scratch the surface in my own life on what is available out there, how do I create more wealth to give back. And it's an ongoing educational system. I've recently read more books on I love property. It's my personal preference of creating wealth and passive income, and we'll touch on passive income in the next part. But the books I've read on property investment have allowed us to make very good decisions and understand the property game. Yes, we've also made mistakes, but that's one asset class. You know, for you it might be whatever, bonds, it may be the stock exchange, whatever floats your boat. But being educated and understanding that it's an investment to really get to know what is important and build that wealth will require you to be constantly keeping yourself up to date with the latest and greatest and educating yourself. All right, so hopefully that makes sense as a part one of a two-part series. I'm just going to recap the points we've discussed, all 7 of them. Financial education was number 1. Getting rid of bad debt was number 2. Number 3, living below your means. Number 4, having a budget. Number 5, getting promoted, now what? Number 6, the comparison black hole. Number 7, advanced financial education. Keep on learning. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your mining. Cheers.